One thing to note is Chevron do have what's called a UDL policy, which is a Universal Design Learning Policy. And we're very proud to have this within Chevron College because it allows the learners to have various ways to submit their assignments. So if they're really struggling with typing or writing or anything like that, we have a version where they can submit an audio version of their learner handbook, or sorry, their written assignment, which is their learner reflective journal. So again, we'll work with them on that and how to do that, and support them. So the idea is that we give them various ways in terms of submission, in terms of their learner reflective piece. We don't want something like that to stop somebody going forward to do this course. So in terms of the assessments. So what I might do is I'll just stop sharing for a second, and I might bring up a sample timetable, which will probably be helpful for people to view. Can everybody see the sample timetable?
Yes.
Perfect. Thank you. So
it's very small. Is there any way you can kind of make it a little bit bigger?
Let me try.
Please, thanks. It's just you can see all the other content around the outside of the word. Yeah, perfect. That's fantastic. Great.
Now, is that better?
Yeah.
Perfect. Okay,
Thank
great.
You.
So this is a sample of a program that we ran for another ETB there, and we started it last week. And the reason I've brought this up is it's because don't focus too much on like dates. Obviously, this is a sample. So as we said, this is something that we will work alongside, you know, the client in relation to how we run it. But roughly speaking, what we've done here is we have taken the one day that we run, the course content, and day one has been split into 2 live virtual classes in the evening, and that runs from 6 to 9:30. Because what you'll see is between 6 and 9 we have all of the content, and the tutor goes through that with the learners, and then you might see here the piece of the 9 to 9:30, which is peer-to-peer sessions. And it's important to note what are peer-to-peer sessions. So part of the QQI program was not only was there mentorship where you link in with a mentor. When we were in the pilot stage for this, the learners were supposed to group in and link in with each other in terms of their groups. And we noticed that when we were coming towards the end of the assessment, this piece of work wasn't being done. So we really felt that where the mentorship was supposed to link in again voluntarily, and where the peer-to-peer piece was supposed to be done voluntarily, it wasn't. So we felt that this had to be brought into a timetable and be supervised and really be timetabled so that that piece of work was done. And in terms of when we went for revalidation there with QQI last year, we could clearly show that this piece of work was being done. So we have added it into the timetable, and this has worked really well. And we've probably done this for the last year or so. Jill, is that correct in terms of the peer-to-peer piece? And it just works so much better.
Sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you there.
Yeah,
but you actually find it starts to happen naturally once they start establishing their relationships within the group throughout the course, because the course itself is very interactive. So this all starts, so even in the times there, sometimes it will happen at sort of, like it might happen at 8 o'clock where everyone starts getting into a really big discussion about something and you let it flow. So it's really good.
Yeah. Oh yeah, it's like we've put a time in there, but like it does happen naturally. It's not exactly timed yet. So there you see week one, we've 2 evening sessions, and that's day one start completed. And then you might see we have the following week 2 and week 3 and so on. It's just where they link in with their mentor, and that's done entirely between the tutor and the mentor and the learner. And those times are allocated again between each other. And generally speaking, what I found, Jill, is when you do those times, it's usually around when they're free. And, you know, often it could be the evenings, it could be in between shifts, it could be on their lunch break, you know, there's no time off required essentially for that in terms for this to take happen. And I think that's the important piece of staff release. If you actually look at the timetable, we don't need them back into a class until week 4. So, and if you continue to see this, what we've done is we have to bring them into class on site. twice, as I said, and we have chosen to bring them in on Unit 3 because that's the emotion and communication piece, which we feel works really well in person. And then you note then they're not back into a live virtual class until 3 weeks later. So subsequently, we literally have 8 classroom sessions over the 25 weeks. 2 are on site, and then we're finished the course. So there's not a huge amount of staff release. And what we have found is when we deliver it in the evening, in this particular case, you know, a lot of people have done their shifts during the day. This suited this particular group. But again, we could do these in the mornings. We could do it in the afternoons. It completely, you know, fits in with your staff roster, basically. And then the mentorship piece then is taking place in their own time, essentially. And then the only really staff release we need is the 2 days over the 25 weeks. So, you know, when you look at all of this, it looks quite a lot, but generally it's 2 days on site, and then they get timed in for their exam at the end. That's if you're doing it as a blended with online and on site, you know. Has anyone any questions on this?
Yes, sorry, just a quick one. How many hours of independent study would you advise for this course?
I don't have the exact figure, but there's really very little other than doing the reflection piece, I think, Jill, in terms of we don't have it dedicated because we have actually timetabled most of it in-house, Pamela, because what we found that, as I said, when we were trying to do the mentoring piece with their own supervisors in-house, wasn't working. When they were supposed to do their peer-to-peer, it wasn't working. So there's very little other than working on their assignment, to be fair. Yeah.
And again, as part of the mentoring, like I did a mentoring session yesterday, and like we want them to think about their workplace and the learning in their workplace. So a lot of it would be around like what I said to the learners yesterday is I want you to consider the people you're working with living with dementia as like, and dementia being a personal experience for them. So they'll come in with that understanding of like people, what they've learned from that piece of work and how they felt with it, and did anything surprise them. So we're asking them to apply small bits in the workplace to bring, which will help them with their reflection in their assessment. Does that make sense?
It does, and I think that's what would make this more attractive. For people. I'm doing a springboard at the moment, and I am exhausted from the independent learning on top of classwork after work.
It's too much. It's too much, and it's something that when we sat down with the HSE, and I mean, bearing in mind this is coming from the HSE, and you know, this is something that it's very rare in my experience, and I have worked with them for the last 10 years, that they're really gearing towards a change of culture and a real difference in terms of how we're teaching somebody to care for somebody with dementia, in terms of their own self, you know, awareness, and also the boundaries, and also how they're learning, because they're exhausted. You're working in an industry where, you know, you're caring for others, you have your own home life. So what we found was by building everything into the timetable, which is that's what I was saying to Gabriel. I hate sending out this timetable without having a conversation with people because it just looks so scary. But in fact, it takes an awful lot away from them, you know, as you said, the self work at home, but really other than doing their assignment, you know, in their own time. But having said that, they have access to Moodle, and we have learners that will go through every inch of it, you know, much more than others. But do we ask of them? No, I suppose is the key thing there.